Hey everyone, this is Mr. Summers for American Government. We're here today with our lesson on political parties. This is chapter 17 from the textbook, lesson 1, the functions of political parties. So we're going to go ahead and jump right on into this. All right, so things that you need to know, things at the end of this lesson: functions of political parties, different types of party systems, evolution of political parties in the United States, the impact of and difficulties faced by third parties in the U.S., those kinds of things. Things that you should be able to do: identify the functions of the political parties. What's their purpose? Describe the different party systems. What types of party systems are there in the world? You should also be able to analyze the evolution of the American political parties and explain the obstacles faced by third parties. Okay, so why do we have political parties? Start off with, both James Madison and George Washington warned us, two major founding fathers, warned us about the dangers of political parties. James Madison, in an address that he wrote in support of the Constitution, referred to political parties as factions, any group of people that come together under a common ideology, set of ideas, are a faction. He said that factions could become very overpowering. George Washington also warned us about political parties. He thought that political parties could actually tear the country apart and render the politics, the government, basically useless and unable to do anything. So, with those two big warnings, why do you think that political parties developed in the U.S. despite these two major founding fathers that for these 2 centuries we have really upheld and honored these two men? Why did we disobey or disregard their warnings? Well, the simple answer is we're a large country. We have people that have different belief systems and how and why the government should function, its purpose, and they kind of divided apart from each other. And there we go with political parties, basically. So we'll get into a little bit of that as we go along, right? So we're going to explore why we have political parties and what purposes they serve in the American government and politics. And there's a few of our more famous or popular parties that we have. Of course, we have the Republicans, the Democrats. We'll get into the symbolism. The Green Party. Does anybody know this one by any chance? This is actually the Libertarian Party, the American Libertarian Party. It's a little hedgehog. We have the Progressive, the Bull Moose Party, and I know my picture there is kind of hiding that. Okay, so some of the major political parties we've had around. All right, so you're going to be thinking of this as we move through these slides today. What functions do political parties serve in government? And here we go. Okay, so what is a political party? Well, a political party is a group of people with very common interests about politics, government, and the role government has in society and in our lives. They get together to win elections. That's their main goal. Control government, influence government policies. And in order to win, those political parties need to find very hardworking candidates. They need money to spread information about their candidates, about their positions on issues. And they need a lot of what we call fans or supporters in order to get that word out and to win. So how do they win? Political party that wins on election day is the political party that has the most fans or supporters show up on election day and vote for that party. That's how you win. So what happens after that? Well, the candidate that wins on election day, now the real work begins. They have to work with other members of their team within government to create and implement policies that they campaigned for, while also then doing a balancing act of preparing for the next election and getting themselves reelected. Now, question that I get all the time: are political parties constitutional? And simple answer is yes. Yes, they are. Now, there's no mention of political parties in the Constitution anywhere. However, political parties have become a very, very important part of the American democratic system. Pretty much the First Amendment is what gives us the right to have political parties. The ideas of the right to peaceably assemble, Okay, and free speech help us to have that right to political parties to gather together and discuss politics and have candidates and things like that. Okay. All right. So electing the candidates, I'm going to go ahead and make myself kind of go away right here so you can see this. All right. So political parties, they recruit people to run for office who appear to have a good chance of being elected. They raise money for those candidates. They organize rallies and meetings to generate enthusiasm for those candidates. They also manage what are called get out the vote events. Those are events that remind their supporters, their fans, to get out and vote for their candidate on election day. They might even offer, in small areas, transportation to get people to and from the voting booths, the polling places, so people will vote. And the more that they can provide those services to people who can't drive, the more access to voting there is. And then the more the people's voice is heard, and the more actual democratic our system becomes. The more people who are able to vote, the more democratic our system is. Another major function, role of political parties is educating the public. In order to educate the public on their policies, parties will publish their positions on important issues like military spending, taxes, pollution, energy, the environment, welfare, social issues, those kinds of things. And how do they do that? Well, they'll print pamphlets, they hold press conferences, they go on news, they have speeches, television ads, radio ads, newspaper ads, articles in newspapers, online advertisements. Um, the biggest online presence that we've been seeing has been since about 2010, 2012, and 2016. We saw a lot of candidates, the presidential candidates, using Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and other social media to get the word out to their supporters, seek and engage supporters, and get their policies and ideas out there. So more and more, we're seeing, a lot of social media being used. Even with all of that, a majority of Americans remain pretty much uninformed about the candidates individually, and that can cause a problem. And that's another function that political parties have, another spot where political parties come in and try to bridge a gap. So yeah, we might not know a lot about the candidate that we're voting for, but we know that they're a member of a political party, and we know what that party stands for. So we know that that person, if they're aligned with that party, they must stand for those things that that party stands for. And that helps us to feel a little bit more comfortable about voting for someone that we don't know a whole lot about. And that's just, the way our system is right now. So when a person supports a candidate just because that candidate is a Democrat or Republican, then that voter generally knows how that candidate is going to stand on key issues, because the platform of the party is mostly the platform of that candidate. Now, political parties will also get people involved in the political process. You can become involved in campaigns by helping going around knocking on doors and talking to people about your candidate that you support. You can help people register to vote. You can post signs around town, around the city. You can donate money. Even on election day, you can actually get a job on election day, going and working in the voting booths, helping people as they come in to get signed in, give them their ballots, make sure the ballots are put away securely and things like that. Parties help with all of those processes as well. Political parties also help to operate the government. They play the key role in running and staffing the executive and legislative branches of government, those offices. Congress and state legislatures are organized to carry on work on the basis of party affiliation. You have a majority party and a minority party, and they each have leaders that run those bodies and help make a lot of the decisions. They have a lot of power. So the power of Congress, especially at the national level, but at the state level as well, is all based on who is the party in power, which is the political party that has the most people representing it within that body. They're the ones that have the most power politically within that group. Okay? So that's how they help operate the government. Parties will play a link between the chief executive, like a governor or a president, and the legislature. The president or governor will work closely with his or her party to make sure or to try to promote the administration's programs, policies, ideas. The only problem with that has been that, at least in the last 3 decades, last 30 years, one party has controlled the White House while another party controlled the houses of Congress, or at least one house of Congress. That's what we call a divided government. When you have a situation like a divided government, it makes it very difficult for people to get stuff done. Why? Well, because the president is of one party and the controlling party of Congress is another, and they don't see eye to eye on policies, and then they begin to fight with each other. And they're so busy fighting that they don't look for compromise to come together and find a resolution of problems and solve problems. Now, that's been happening for the last 30 years at the top, at the national level. It's begun to trickle down about the last 20 years or so into the state legislatures as well. So we're seeing those kinds of stop in progress, stop in achieving and completing goals at the state levels as well as at the federal. Patronage is basically giving favors to someone who is loyal to you. It might be someone who donated a lot of money to your campaign or to the political party, and so then the party will come to you, the winning candidate, and say, hey, we've got Jimmy Schmimmy over here who donated a couple of $1 million to your campaign. They need a job in government. And so you kind of end up being forced to do that. Or, you might just decide, what, Susie Lucy over there donated a lot of money, so I'm going to give her a position within government. So it could be business executives, could be labor unions. They all contribute very heavily to political parties. And then they kind of expect some kickback in one way or another. It could be that they expect the government to be sympathetic to their problems if that party comes to power. Or they may expect that some of their leaders take key positions within government. Okay. Now, pros and cons to patronage. Obviously, patronage has its problems. If someone who is very inexperienced gets into a job, they have no idea, have no experience or anything about what that position is, what that body of government is, and now they're put in to be the leader of that group. It's not going to be a very successful branch of government right there. There's going to be a lot of failures. Other times, though, you get some very skilled people into those positions who might not have had a chance otherwise. But it also allows, so a positive for that political party is that it allows that party in power to make sure that they have some very loyal people in government to help carry out the visions for public policy. So that's a pro for them, maybe not necessarily for the American people. So in that policy development, that's basically what government is here to do, is to develop policies, laws, get them passed, and the political parties kind of help guide that. Executives like the president or a governor work with the legislature to get those laws passed and then enforce those laws. Now, the party that doesn't have power or the majority in the legislature or the executive branch is also known as the opposition party. Okay, so President Trump right now is president. He is a Republican, so the opposition party would be the Democrats. In Congress, we have Republicans are in control. They're the majority party of the Senate. And so the opposition party within the Senate would be Democrats. Within the House of Representatives, the Democrats are the majority party and the Republicans are the opposition party. Another example of divided government, very divided government. So the job of that opposition party is to be a watchdog, to watch over that party in power, to criticize them, to offer solutions to problems, to make sure that that party doesn't become too powerful, and therefore do damage to the Constitution and to our political system, the democratic system. So yeah, a lot of times whoever the opposition party calls out the party in power on a lot of kind of small things, might seem nitpicking, and they flip and change roles back and forth all the time. It's all about trying to create balance within the government. Our government works because of balance. If we offset that balance and let one party become too powerful, one branch of government become too powerful, it does topple over the entire government, and our democracy no longer exists. Okay, so there's that bit on stability, right? So one thing about stability, there's really only been one time that there was a revolution that occurred because of an election, and that was in 1860 when Lincoln became president. When Abraham Lincoln became president, he was the first Republican president, and Republicans had control of Congress. And the Republicans, the main part of their platform that year was to end slavery. And you had a handful of states, southern states, that decided they wanted no part of that. They wanted to keep slavery. And so they separated themselves from the United States and started a war over that. It's the only time that there's been a violent revolution. They, of course, did not win. They were forced back into the Union, forced to accept the end of slavery. And we'll get more into that again another time. But other than that, every other time, there has been no violence at the end of elections, no violent takeovers or anything like that. The picture that is there is the outgoing president, President Barack Obama, and the incoming president, President Trump, on the day of Trump's inauguration. So as they are basically the handing over of power there. And that's it for today. All right, folks. So thank you very much for paying attention. If you liked the lesson, please go ahead and hit subscribe down there at the bottom. And we'll see you again soon.